You cannot get over the fact that you have a teenager who is dead. And that's a horrible, horrible tragedy.
Governor Mike DeWine addresses the shooting death of 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant. She died after getting shot by a Columbus police officer. Now DeWine is pushing for a police reform bill. That shooting happened the same day a jury reached a historic verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial. Representative Joyce Beatty says this is just a first step towards justice. And a shakeup is coming in Ohio politics. We talk one-on-one with Representative Steve Stivers, who announced this week he's making a career change. Thank you for joining us for Face the State. I'm Karina Nova. Columbus entered the national spotlight this week after a police officer shot and killed a 16-year-old girl. Ma'Khia Bryant's death sparked protests across the city. She died the same day a jury in Minneapolis found former police officer Derek Chauvin guilty of murdering George Floyd. In an effort to be transparent, Columbus police released body camera video of the moments leading up to Ma'Khia's death and what happened after she was shot. We've decided not to show certain parts out of respect for her family and her friends. We have reviewed this video. It shows Ma'Khia holding a knife, apparently lunging at another woman. We want to warn you this may be difficult to watch. Here's 10 TV's Clay Gordon.
This is the body camera video released from Columbus Police. Interim Police Chief Mike Woods says Officer Nicholas Reardon was the one who discharged his firearm. Here he is heading towards Legion Lane after 2 911 calls to police.
Arriving at 3171 Legion Lane on the right.
The footage shows 7 people in a driveway, and when the officer says what's going on, that's when another woman is shoved to the ground. Police later identify Ma'Khia Bryant. She appears to be the one shoving down the other woman. We are going to slow this part down. Officer Reardon draws his gun 10 seconds after getting out of the cruiser. A woman on the ground gets kicked by a man on the sidewalk. Columbus police say other potential crimes within this video are being investigated separately. Then you see Ma'Khia Bryant lunging towards a woman in pink with what appears to be a knife. Then the first shot is fired. We're going to pause this video here for 10 seconds as Ma'Khia falls to the ground and the officer's gun is still pointed at her. We're not going to show her death out of respect of her life and for her family. A second officer's body camera arriving on scene picked up the shots. This is as much as we could show you right now. Again, out of respect for Ma'Khia and her family. Police are also releasing a third body camera angle, which shows officers rendering aid and CPR to Ma'Khia. Interim Chief Woods says medics were notified 90 seconds later. In Columbus, Clay Gordon, 10 TV News.
In response to the shooting, Governor Mike DeWine is pushing for lawmakers to pass a bill aimed at increasing police training statewide. The bill would also include money to help cities pay for training officers, which has been a sticking point in getting the bill passed. 10 TV's Kevin Landers is at the State House to explain.
Governor Mike DeWine says police officers across the state are not trained the same, and that needs to change. He's supporting a bill that would not only require mandatory yearly de-escalation training, but also create a database to track use of force. The bill would provide a $10 million grant to assist local police agencies to buy body cameras and a $1 million grant to help police recruit women and minorities into law enforcement careers. The bill would create a state licensing board for police officers similar to what doctors and lawyers have, and it would create a database where officers who have worked in the past and track any disciplinary issues. It's something the NAACP of Ohio supports.
We've had so many situations in Ohio where a police officer was about to be brought up on charges. He knew that. He then transferred to another department, and that another police department. That information never stayed with him. So we believe if you're licensed like a doctor or a lawyer and you leave one police department and go to another, that information will follow you.
These are common sense reforms. These are reforms that police can agree to, They're reforms that community activists can agree to, and they just make common sense.
State Representative Bill Plummer is the lead sponsor of the bill. He's also a former sheriff. Reporting from the State House, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
The night of the shooting, Columbus Police and Mayor Andrew Ginther held a late-night news conference. Ginther's called the situation heartbreaking and horrible, and he discussed the thought process behind releasing the body camera video so quickly.
We felt transparency and sharing this footage, as incomplete as it may be at this time, was critically important to make sure we were sharing good, accurate information about what transpired today with the public and for this grieving family.
As we mentioned, Ma'Khia's death happened the same day of Derek Chauvin's conviction. A jury found the former Minneapolis police officer guilty of murder and manslaughter in George Floyd's death. Chauvin kneeled on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus delivered a statement after the verdict was read. Here's Representative Joyce Beatty.
Let me just say this to the press on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus. We come today as a group, 56 strong. Our message today is this verdict we certainly agree with. Guilty on all charges. But we want our message to be very clear that this is just the first step. We know clearly that justice has been delayed. So when we come today, we will continue to say all of the names. We will fight continuously for all of those who died or have been injured senselessly by law enforcement. We know that there are still the mothers, the families, the children who are shedding tears today because a verdict will not bring back their family members.
Here's what Governor Mike DeWine had to say about the Chauvin verdict.
Our system of justice worked. The jury members listened to the evidence, did their duty, came back with a verdict. As we go forward as a nation, there is a lot for us to learn from this great tragedy. George Floyd's death laid bare some of our deepest divisions in our country. Our goal, my goal, all of our goal, should be to work every single day to bring us together as a people, to bring us together as a country.
Chauvin will be sentenced in about 2 months. In the meantime, you may have seen several claims online about how long he'll be in prison. Our National Verify team investigator Gabe Cohen breaks down the state's rules and the likely outcome.
We're seeing a lot of claims about Derek Chauvin's sentence and how long it'll be, and a lot of them are wrong. So let's verify. How long could Chauvin be behind bars? Our sources, court records and rules, and 3 legal experts. Chauvin was convicted of all 3 charges, but in Minnesota, they don't add those together. He'll only serve time for the most severe charge, second-degree murder, which carries a maximum sentence of 40 years. But Minnesota uses sentencing guidelines, and for someone with no prior convictions like Chauvin, the recommended sentence is only 12.5 years, with a range of 10.5 to 15 years for the judge to pick from. Judge Cahill can extend the sentence beyond 15 years with what's called an upward departure, but only if prosecutors present evidence of aggravating factors. It's rare. In 2019, only 1.4% of Minnesota cases ended in an upward departure. But prosecutors in Chauvin's case are asking the judge for a longer sentence, citing 5 factors: that George Floyd, handcuffed, was particularly vulnerable, that he was treated with particular cruelty, that Chauvin abused a position of authority, that he committed the crime as part of a group, and that he did it in front of children. Typically, the jury decides if those aggravating factors exist, and then the judge will consider it during sentencing.
I'm willing to waive it and have Judge Cahill decide on those issues.
In this case, Chauvin waived that right.
So basically, I will be answering those verdict form questions instead of the jury.
It's all up to Judge Cahill if those factors exist and if they should mean a longer sentence.
It's really probably a matter of practicality. We kind of implicitly know they've also said those factors are present.
That's law professor Rachel Moran.
Judge Cahill does have a fairly wide range of sentencing possibilities available to him.
They'll hold a sentencing hearing where evidence of Chauvin's past could come up.
Both parties have the opportunity to advocate for a specific sentence.
That's law professor and former U.S. Attorney Rachel Paulos.
How many years might the state request?
I don't have a sense of exactly how much time they'll request, but I think they'll want to send a message to the public and to law enforcement.
I do think Judge Cahill is going to be very likely to go above the guidelines.
That's law professor Ted Samsel Jones.
I think a sentence of 20 years is what I would expect.
Do you think there's a chance the judge gets anywhere near 40 years?
I would not want to speculate on that, Gabe, but I think it would be highly unusual.
So we can verify Chauvin's sentence could be anywhere from no prison time up to 40 years. But our experts say it'll likely be much closer to that recommended range, 10.5 to 15 years, even if Judge Cahill goes above it. Bear in mind, in Minnesota, offenders only serve 2/3 of their sentence in prison and the last third on parole. Chauvin is now behind bars, awaiting sentencing in 8 weeks. With your Verify, I'm Gabe Cohen.
If you see any claims online you'd like us to verify, you can email us. It's verify@10tv.com. Representative Steve Stivers says he needed to make a big change in his life in order to spend more time with his family. Up next, he opens up about the decision to start a new career. Tracy Townsend asks him if he's out of the political world for good. Meanwhile, Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley announces she's coming after Governor Mike DeWine's job. Why, she says, she's better suited to lead Ohio. A shakeup is brewing in the U.S. House of Representatives. Ohio Congressman Steve Stivers says he's stepping down in May. He'll become president and CEO of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. He spoke with Tracy Townsend about the decision and his future.
So how long ago did you decide you wanted to make this move, or was this an opportunity that presented itself?
This is, they called me. It wasn't something that I chased, but it over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking to them, and it didn't really become that real until this weekend. But then I was very focused on maybe the United States Senate, but as I've evaluated running for the Senate or taking this job, I realized that, if I take the Senate job, I'd be away from my kids more than I am now. And if I take the Ohio Chamber job, I'll have a chance to be a dad again and be home, 7 days a week in the evening at least. And, I'll still have work to do, but I won't be traveling, and the job's based in Columbus, which is nice.
Can you talk about what you'll be bringing to the table? I mean, I feel like you'll have just this base of knowledge for Ohio businesses based on.
Well, I've had a chance to work with hundreds of Ohio businesses in my time in Congress, and I'm excited to work now with thousands of businesses. They have 8,000 members, and work on issues that will help grow our economy and help make sure that the citizens of Ohio have a chance to have great jobs and great opportunity. And that's good for families, and it's good for the Ohio economy. I'm super excited about this.
So what about the downside? That's one less vote that they have in the House if you leave. Well, once
that's right. And, unfortunately, change happens, and, the seat will be vacant for a little while, but the voters always get to choose a member of Congress. So there'll be a special election at some point. The governor will have to decide when he's going to call it. And then, there'll be somebody right behind me, I'm sure, that will do a great job. I'm excited to see who steps up to run for Congress, but it's going to be a great opportunity. And there's a lot of great people that I think are interested. I'll certainly miss the people. I'll miss, dealing with bigger issues and making a difference for people all around the country, the veterans issues, things I've worked on. But there's a chance to make a huge difference in the state of Ohio for, 11.3 million people that call Ohio home every day. And I'm excited to continue my work there.
Could this be something like you'll do this for a minute and then maybe you'll run for governor?
I never really plan out my future. If somebody would have told me I might work for the Ohio Chamber, I would have been surprised. So I just try to do what's in front of me, and the future takes care of itself if you do a good job. But I don't know that I have any plans to run for office in the future. I wouldn't want anybody to think that my time at the chamber is about setting me up to run for office. It's about setting Ohio up for success, and that's what I'm going to do.
Stivers was reelected to represent Ohio's 15th congressional district in 2018, marking his 5th term. Stivers isn't the only Ohio name leaving a seat open. Senator Rob Portman announced earlier this year that he won't be running again. 10 TV's Kevin Landers spoke with a political expert about what these two openings mean for Ohio's future.
How unusual is this for Ohio politics?
I think this is unusual. Ohio has had a very stable set of office holders over time. Incumbents tend to stay in their position unless they happen to be defeated in an election.
Both men have been in their seats since 2011. What does a new candidate for each of these seats mean to the state of Ohio? New ideas, new faces, new perspective, or are these solidly red seats?
Well, it remains to be seen how solidly red they are. I expect that the nominees for both the congressional seat that will be selected this year and the Senate seat for next year, the Republican nominees, are going to be people who are more from the Trump wing of the party. Again, it may be a very large wing. It may not be so large a wing. I don't think we know that yet. And so I think that's going to change the nature of representation on the Republican side, because it's going to bring into the fold, at least for the general election, people who are much more supporters of Donald Trump than either Portman or Stivers have been. And that is going to be a difference. Now, does that open things up for the Democrats? It could. I think it really depends upon what happens with Trump and the Trump people in the party between now and 2022.
Who do you think would throw their name, or who's likely, do you think, to become the next replacement for the Portman and Stivers seat? Anybody you think of?
Well, on the Portman side, it looks like the field is pretty much clearing on the Democratic side for Tim Ryan. We'll see. There may be other people who throw their hat into the ring, but right now I think Ryan would be the odds-on favorite to be the Democratic nominee. On the Republican side, I don't know. There are going to be a passel of candidates. Each of them, it appears, running for the Trump endorsement. Whether he will endorse anyone there is, of course, questionable. Josh Mandel would love to have that endorsement, and so would Jane Timken, of course. And then there are others as well who have really been supporters of President Trump when he was president, and still are supporters there. And so I think it's going to be a free-for-all on the Republican side as each candidate tries to out-Trump the other. That, I think, is an opportunity for Tim Ryan to win that election in 2022. Doesn't mean that he can assume that he is going to win it, because this is still a moderately Republican state. So he's going to have to run a good campaign there. But divisiveness within the Republican or on the Republican side that comes out of the primary could be a problem for the Republicans. On the Stivers replacement, I just don't know. I've read this morning who some possibilities may be. I don't know much about any of them except maybe for Stephanie Kunze, who of course is from the Columbus area. She would be somebody I think more in the Stivers mold, but there clearly will be people there who will be trying to grab the Trump mantle, and Trump may endorse in that particular primary. Who knows? He may not pay much attention to it either. And of course, it comes up very fast. And then, of course, they have to run again in what might likely be a revamped district by the time the election in 2022 rolls around.
Another race that heated up this week was the race for Ohio's next governor.
You see, when you've been through what Dayton has, factories out, opioids in, Mother Nature running wild, a gunman changing everything in 32 seconds, it molds you.
The mayor of Dayton wants to be governor of Ohio. This is part of the video Nan Whaley released saying she's seeking the nomination from the Democratic Party. She's been the mayor of Dayton since 2014. 10 TV talked with her as she toured a local food bank earlier this week.
You know, I'm running for governor because I believe that the people of Ohio deserve better. Like I mentioned before, people are working longer and longer hours, getting paid less and less while their costs are going up. We as a state have to be laser focused on good paying job creation with real wages that people can provide for their family. We also need to deliver on our long promise to provide education regardless of what zip code you live in. And we really can't get that done because, quite frankly, the State House is more concerned on who's lining their political pockets or their personal pockets and what self-interested lobbyist is coming through their door. We need full ethics reform to get any of these issues done because the issues that are taking the first mind of the state really have nothing to do with what's going on in communities like Columbus here or the other county or the other areas they're serving. That's what drives me into this race. As mayor of Dayton, I see that firsthand. And quite frankly, Mike DeWine is too weak to stand up to any of this. He's not willing to take on the corruption that we see. He's not willing to take on the extremists in his party. And Ohio deserves a change, and they deserve better.
Some strong words there from Nan Whaley about Governor Mike DeWine. We asked Republican strategist Mark Weaver to respond to Whaley's challenge. Here's what he had to say.
Democrats have had much trouble winning anything statewide in Ohio. They're a little bit like that team that used to play the Harlem Globetrotters, the Washington Generals. They just can't seem to get a win. Mike DeWine is a well-known person to most Ohioans. It will be difficult for her to change people's minds about him. People know him well enough to have an opinion about him. It's a good guess that Nan Whaley's name recognition outside of Dayton is in the single digits. She's just not that well known. And now Mike DeWine, whatever you think of him, is the most dominant and durable brand in Ohio and has been for better than 3 decades.
In other news, COVID-19 cases are on the rise in Ohio. State medical leaders say the vaccine is the answer. The push to get younger Ohioans to roll up their sleeves. After weeks of rising COVID-19 cases in Ohio, we're starting to go in the right direction when it comes to COVID-19 cases per 100,000 people. This week, we are nearly at 186 cases per 100,000 people. Last week, that number was at 200. Governor Mike DeWine set the guidelines at 50 cases per 100,000 to drop the state's health order. But that could change. When asked, Governor Mike DeWine said he would look into using vaccinations as a guideline for lifting the health orders rather than the cases per 100,000 people. Dr. Bruce Vanderhoff, Ohio's chief medical officer, says the key right now to beating the virus is to get people vaccinated, especially young people.
For many, many young people, what happens is you get the virus and it's relatively mild, or you don't even notice you've got it at all, and you're spreading it around to the people that you care about, and they could get sick. Vaccine avoids all of that.
Tomorrow, Columbus City Schools will begin its in-school vaccinations for students 16 and older. The vaccines will be given out at Beechcroft, Briggs, Independence, and Whetstone High School. And students will be able to take a bus to get to and from the sites. The goal is to distribute up to 6,000 doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine for CCS students. And that does it for us here on Face the State today. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.